get to know her a little bit, start sort of like her, and you're having drinks, and you think, wow, what a catch. You wake up the next morning, and the sun's shining through the window, and she's laying there in bed like this, and you're like, who am I in bed with? Oh, that's the woman you saw in the dark bar last night, inebriated. God has shown light upon your sin, and now you are cut to the core with what you have done. Anybody relate to this? Oh, yeah. You didn't marry her, did you, Bill? Okay, good. He doesn't know me at all, but he about died right there, man. He's like, oh, that was a pastor that just said that. Anyways, guys, drawing closer to God, the closer you get, the brighter you see things. The closer you see, and you don't see beauty, you don't see perfectness. It's amazing how you just keep seeing more and more ugliness. Just keep getting closer to God. You'll find out that you suck really bad. You'll thank God that there's a Savior for you. I flip those lights on and look at myself all naked in the mirror and I go, wow, my wife really loves me. Because there's nothing to look at. There's nothing to look at. There's nothing to look at. But there is something to hold on to anyways. Hold on to that belly fat. Yeah, I know where your mind went, you little sick pervert. Seriously, dude. Nate's taking notes. There's nothing. Whoa. You ever take notes, not really pay attention to what you're listening to, then you're like, what did he just say? Really? Less of me and more of him. That's when I look in the mirror and I want to see less of me and more of him, because by golly, I'm ugly. The closer I get to him, the less my flesh crying out matters. It still cries, folks. Your flesh will cry till the day you die. I'm a poet, and I know it. It just don't really put that much value into it anymore. I don't really care about what it looks like in the mirror. Anybody ever, when you were in your 20s, you really cared about what you look like. And you've, 4 kids later, a husband that loves you no matter what, you know what I mean, right? I mean, my wife knows I love her. My God, I loved her when she looked like an alien was eating her body. When she had the twins, it looked like an alien was eating her body. She would lay there and her stomach would go. You ever see that movie? When you have 2 little babies in there and you're her size, she was on bed rest, she'd just lay there and her stomach would be like, and you'd get down there and talk to them and they'd be like, it was hilarious, wasn't it, Arabelle? It was fun. She's like, if he loves me when I look like that, he surely loves me now. When you look in that mirror, you could say, if God loves that, I'm loved. Whole different perspective on when I am weak, he is strong. You find yourself in the mirror trying to dress it up, look pretty. You have this whole medicine cabinet full of makeup and hair straightener and all these things that make yourself look beautiful. You put a mask on at night so that. Wait, anybody still do that? Dylan, you still do that? Put a mask on at night to make your. I just really I want my complexion to be sparkly. Dylan. Okay, when was the last time you looked at yourself in the mirror? You need to go home and look at get a full mirror. Close the door to your bathroom, get butt naked and look at yourself in the mirror. Try not to laugh. Mike reads over there, can I take pictures? No! No, you can't take pictures. Jeez. Look in that mirror. And there is nothing to hold on to there. You're going to shut the light off. Oh, man. When I was 20, I look in the mirror. Yeah. "25 years later, it's like nothing to hold on to. If you're starting into your 30s, you think you're going to hold on to it. You know, it's the trick that God's played on you, right? You just keep trying to hold on to it. Oh, I saw that guy on TV. He's 60 years old. He gets paid to look like that, folks. Are you going to sit around for 5 or 6 hours a day working out so you could hold on to what you look like? Go right ahead. You're of no use to God whatsoever. Some of you have heard me say the last couple of months, if things were the way I wanted them, things would be very different. I think God gave me this building just to test my flesh. There's not a one of you that knew me before I gave my life to Christ completely. I was the guy I could go, oh, we're going to go run 8 miles today? Okay, let's go. No joke. For fun, I'd run from my house to the state park over in Mount Gilead. I lived 4 miles outside of Edison in Denmark. You guys know where Denmark is on 95? I lived in Denmark. I ran to the state park just to run the hills. I loved it. That's what I love to do. I gave all that up, man. Serve Jesus. You have to give up being in shape? No. There's some things I could do better. But God became more important than all of that. I know what I'm talking about when I looked in the mirror and was like, yeah, man. Who wouldn't want that? You know what I'm talking about, Chuck. You have the same disease. You do. Yep, just to show yourself you were a stud. Nothing to hold on to. Nothing. You got some handles now? Yeah, but there's plenty to hold on to. The flesh will still cry. I just don't put that much power and importance and value into what it says. Because I have seen what God can do. I have seen what Mike can do, and I have seen what God can do. Mike hurts people. Mike leaves a trail of pain and frustration and bitterness behind. I've seen what God can do. Even when I suck, he still does it. All things are possible with God. Remember that last week? Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. So which one would you rather go with? The guy that you looked at in the mirror? The best way to describe it is if God is standing behind you in the mirror, can you even see him for what you're looking at of yourself? God's back there doing something and you look at him in the mirror and all you see is yourself, and all you see is the faults, and all you see is your strengths, and all you see is the things that you need to work on, and all you see is the things you need to fix. What about what God's doing behind you? Well, I can't see him until I fix this. turn the light off and turn around. This is the prayer I want you all to say with me today. You can write it down. Evan's probably put it on the Facebook already. He's probably already got it on there right now. We're online streaming the services. I will see where God has brought me today, and I will rejoice, for he is good. He is faithful. He has condescended down to where I was when I was there, and he has brought me out to where he intends me to be. I will be glad in him. I will be captivated by his provision and his glory. I am humbled for fear of being removed from his presence, for in his presence is life and contentment. Go back one. Did you know that God condescends down to you where you are right now? To change you, to draw you to himself. I remember in my late 20s, I read that Bible verse where it talked about him condescending to where I was. What that means is God doesn't have to be here. God doesn't have to save you. God doesn't have to be behind you when you're looking at yourself in the mirror. But he showed up at your house this morning when you looked at yourself in the mirror to be behind you, to try to get you to turn around. He doesn't want to see your ugly flesh in the mirror. He showed up because he loves you, because he wants you to be with him. Who do you choose? Who do you choose? You're going to keep looking at the mirror? You're going to keep looking at the things that you can fix? You're going to keep looking at trying to be a better person? Some of you, I have been accused of being too graceful and too merciful in ministry. How many of you guys know this to be true? I have the benefit of experience. I think back to what I was like in 1991. When Stanley Rankin asked me to teach Sunday school and start a youth group in his church. Who was I? Do you know what Stanley knew? Stanley knew that I had a heart for God, and no matter how bad I sucked, God could change me. And Stanley started praying for my stupid, prideful rear end. Well, Stanley wasn't one of those guys that would say, okay, Lord, we come here today. I'll never forget the day he asked me to show up on a Sunday night, an hour early, so I could pray with him in his office. There was no reason for it. He just wanted to pray with me. He scared me. He goes, if I've already started, just come in and pray. Okay. So I get there, and he had started. There was no music. Stanley didn't need music. There was, oh God! Crying out, weeping. I felt this big. I'd grown up all my life with people like that. Stanley wasn't doing it because I was showing up. That's how Stanley prayed. Man, I thank God Stanley prayed like that. Stanley didn't pray like that at church. Stanley didn't get in the congregation and scream his head off till people could hear him. Oh, he just, when he's out in public, he just, oh, there's, oh, yes, oh, yes. By golly, when Stanley didn't know anybody was around, Stanley prayed. He prayed for me. I needed it. I look back on who I was then. When someone comes to me and says, Pastor Mike, I think God's telling me to do this. I'm like, and then I remember praying with Stanley. And I'm like, God used me back then. God can use you. And I hear people, well, are you sure you want that person in that position? Do you know what they're like? Do you know they've got a boyfriend? Do you know they got a girlfriend? Do you know what they're doing? You know Folks, within 6 months, Sunday school class went from 2 to 3 kids to 20. And God did things in my personal life that drew me closer to him. Dozen or 2 dozen children got saved. Came to the knowledge of who Jesus Christ were. There were church kids in that Sunday school class who hated church. Thought it was stupid. Mom and dad are hypocrites. A relationship with Jesus Christ became real to them because someone who was closer to their age was ministering to them with all their heart. Was I qualified? Oh, no. Not by the man's standard. Was I qualified? Oh, yes. Why? Because I wanted God's will to be done. I wanted to serve God. And that qualified me. I want to ask you a question. If you came to see me one day and I was in there praying for you, and I was mentioning your name outwardly, crying out to God, would you be afraid of me? I was afraid of Stanley. I wanted to do what Stanley wanted me to do. Because my God, if that man prayed for me like, get him, God, I knew I was in trouble. He wasn't going to have to whoop me. He'd just say, Lord, do what you got to do to him. And Stanley was the kind of guy, he wasn't afraid to pray that prayer. He needed it. He had 4 boys and 1 daughter. And his daughter was the youngest, which is really cute. Because all their life they grew up and it was my little sister, you know. She didn't need any affection. Let's read this together. We're going to be a cult today, okay? We're going to read together like all the other churches down here that do readings and the congregational readings. We're all going to read together and brainwash ourselves, okay? Go back one here. Are we at the beginning of this prayer? Go back one. Are you with me? Oh, you. Okay, go forward right here. Let's read together. I will see where God has brought me today, and I will rejoice, for he is good, he is faithful, and he has condescended down to where I was when I was there, and he has brought me out to where he intends me to be. I will be glad in him. I will be captivated by his provision and his glory. I am humbled for fear of being removed from his presence. For in his presence is life and contentment. You know you could overcome all your sin right there. Even those horrible problems with your nerves and anxiety, your outbursts of anger and wrath. Why don't you try drawing closer to God? Stop looking at the mirror. Stop focusing on you. Stop focusing on you and what you think you need to do. And start focusing on God and where he is at and what he is doing. And then look for an opportunity to join him in that. If you want to see supernatural, amazing results, God-sized results in your life, that's how you do it. You don't do it by going to school and getting certified so you can do a ministry. If God's called you to do something, you'll get certified eventually, one way or the other. He'll open doors. He'll change things. He'll show you. Don't worry about it. But when he changes things, the enemy will swoop in and try to convince you that those old hymns were not really worship. Those older people in that church, why are you changing things, Mike? Do you think that we didn't know how to worship God? No, why? Watching me, listen, watching me worship God to those old hymns convinced them that I wasn't judging them. You're like, is there a lesson there? Think about it. Watching me. I grew up with those old hymns, folks. As you can tell, I can sing all of them from memory, every verse. Some of them have 5 verses. I can sing them from memory. Watching me passionately worship Jesus Christ to those old hymns convinced them that what God was doing was not judgment upon them. What God is doing in your life today does not negate what he did years ago. The fact that God is moving in your life today confirms that what he was doing years ago was God. I look back at 1991. I was the biggest arrogant boob you're ever going to meet in your life. Maybe behind Mike Wilson. I don't know, Wilson. Have you seen that picture of me coaching track? That's arrogance. And what it means is that God has drawn me closer to him. That's all it means. And this is the day. I'm going to rejoice, not in what I see in the mirror, but I'm going to turn my eye from the mirror, and I'm going to look to the Lord. Listen, folks, God doesn't need you to look in the mirror and his brightness and glory and find the problems. He needs you to focus on him. He knows what the problems are. If you have a booger on your nose, he will flick it off. He will tell you to wipe your nose. He doesn't need you looking in the mirror every day, trying to be good enough. trying to be good enough so you're ready to do whatever he called you to do. Okay? Just draw closer to him. I wish there were some people here besides my parents, and they're not even here this morning, who knew me in 1991. Scary. I look back, I don't even know if I would have had the faith that Stanley Rankin had. Being the pastor of a church today, I don't know if I'd have had the faith to put someone like me in that position to minister. But he did. Thank God Stanley wasn't looking in the mirror. Thank God Stanley didn't grab a hold of me and drag me to the mirror and go, let's look at who you are. Stanley just was seeing what God was doing. And he wanted to join God, and he wanted to give me an opportunity to join God. And we drew closer to God together. Can you do that? That's all that's required of you. You are serving in a church that does not take anybody that will serve God because we don't have anybody to do things. We will take anybody that's willing to serve God in ministry because that's how God works. Find another one like that. Find another pastor who will take the arrows from the community. You have no excuse. None. We have Debbie over here. She's made horrible, stupid mistakes. I mean, like, momentary lapse of reason kind of stupidity. And the only reason she's not involved in ministry right now is because it won't help her. It will enable her. So she's taken some time and focused on her relationship with Jesus Christ. But God's grace is sufficient, folks. Or isn't it? Oh. If she comes up to you and apologizes to you, don't say it's okay. Say, now it's going to be okay if you remain like this. So what has God called you to do that he's drawing you to himself? I don't know what it is. Only you do. If God tells me what it is for you, I will come to you directly and tell you, trust me. I will. I'll be like, hey, has God told you to do anything? Jim, what were you like when you first started singing on the worship team up at that church in, where were you at, Bowling Green area? What were you like? Are you different today? Are you a stronger Christian? Closer to God? Yeah. Chris, what were you like when you started leading worship at this church? Chris was an absolute imbecile. People looked at me like, you're going to let, oh my God, Pastor Mike, what is wrong with you? There were countless times that the worship team showed up Sunday morning for sound check, and Chris didn't. Chris didn't call. Chris didn't tell anybody. We'd have to be like, hey, Chris, you coming to practice? Oh, no, dude, sorry, I was up really late last night playing video games. He wouldn't say that, but we knew what was going on.